Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Game Week 22 Fantasy Football Fix live stream. Not deadline, live stream. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this double Game Week 22 live stream, it's on the title, guys. We're going to be particularly discussing that double Game Week 22 that has been announced. We're going to be looking at the specific fixtures, teams to target, and in particular, those players that you need to bring in to your teams ahead of next Friday's deadline. Remember, we have a whole week until that Game Week 22 deadline, so don't be making any early transfers just in case anything comes up along the way in regards to COVID situations or injuries. And of course, we have had our first casualty going into Game Week 22, and that is going to be Son at Spurs. So for those who don't know, Son has been confirmed with a muscle injury, and it is predicted that he could be out for up to 4 weeks. Now, again, there is plenty to unpack in regards to Son between now and the Game Week 22 deadline. So I really don't urge managers panicking about what to do with Son, whether to sell him straight away. I think it's plenty of time for you to analyse the situation and see what direction you want to go with your replacements. And I really do think that hopefully in this video we can narrow down some specific players that are worth bringing into your teams ahead of Game Week 22. So as always, guys, I can see plenty of you in the chat. Kenny, Leskip, Vivek, how are you doing? If you want to support the channel, make sure you like the video and hit that subscribe button just to show the love and support the channel going forward. Of course, we've got plenty of videos dropping. I can see FPL Phillips in the chat and Tom, of course. Plenty to discuss in this one, guys. And as always, make sure you head over to fantasyfootballfix.com, the leading FPL platform. All the information is in the description below the video. And as always, I really do urge you guys, just uploading your scores for free to get access to all the free tools available. And in particular, the likes of the price predictor, which we talk about week in, week out. So without further ado, guys, as I mentioned, we're going to be specifically looking at double Game Week 22 and Son replacements. And as always, I'm going to be opening up the floor for Q&As just to really get an idea on what you guys want to talk about. I can use the Fantasy Football Fix website to really deep dive into some of the answers to these questions. So as I mentioned, guys, for those that have been living under a rock, Game Week 22 is a double. Now, does that mean there is going to be doubles for every team that has been announced? We're unsure yet, and that's just because of the COVID situation right now. So although you can see on screen here, Burnley play both Leicester and Watford at home. Hopefully these games do go ahead, but we don't know what the COVID landscape is going to be looking like once these fixtures come around. So fingers crossed we get full amount of these double game weeks, and hopefully we can really capitalise on these fixtures available. But look, I have the fixtures here on our fixture analyzer based on the best fixtures ranked down to the worst. And as you can see there, Burnley currently with the best fixtures in Game Week 22 of home games against Leicester and Watford at home. Now, I know Burnley assets are probably not at the highest of agendas right now, in particular currently owned players. So I do think some assets like Chris Wood, who we're going to touch on later, could appeal as differential punts going into this Game Week 22 deadline. Now, Watford's second best were away fixtures to Newcastle and Burnley. Brighton at home to Crystal Palace and Chelsea. Then we have Man United away to Villa and Brentford. And if you guys checked out my previous video where I touched on the initial reaction to double Game Week 22, I spoke about how I think on paper, although they look like good fixtures, this could be a very tricky double game week for Man United against an Aston Villa side under Steven Gerrard, who, yes, picked up a poor result in Game Week 21, but are looking like a decent outfit. And Brentford, who have proved to be tough cookies at home against some of the big boys, as you remember, Arsenal and other teams, in particular Aston Villa last game week. Spurs with a double, Arsenal at home and Leicester away. And obviously you guys in the chat right now talking about Son's injury. He is going to be a big miss for Game Week 22. It's all but confirmed that he's going to be missing both of those games, and a real hit for those managers that did own him, because he looked like one of the best assets to own in the premium departments going into this double game week. And last few fixtures that have doubles, Leicester with Burnley away and Tottenham at home. Brentford with arguably the worst double in Liverpool away and Man United at home. And Chelsea to round it off away at City and away at Brighton. That is going to be a very tricky double game week for Chelsea in particular. But probably enough for if you do own Chelsea assets who are actually fit, because they are right now in an injury crisis, could be worth a hold just for that particular double game week. So first and foremost, guys, as I mentioned in my previous video yesterday, we have a week basically until the double game week 22 deadline. So really, although it feels like you want to get itchy feet, you want to pull the transfers early, we still haven't finished game week 21. We have the midweek fixtures still to happen next week, Tuesday and Wednesday night. So plenty can happen between now and then. And of course we have Carabao Cup and FA Cup, Man City playing tonight. So there is so much that can happen. I know a lot of managers probably right now are seeing the injuries to Son and all want to fire and make transfers. I really do urge you guys, caution and just take a pause for the next week until the deadline comes around where we can reassess the situation, because who knows, we have plenty of injuries going into this double game week 22. But as I mentioned, we're going to be touching on the projected points for game week 22 and beyond, because I know a lot of managers right now don't necessarily just want to pinpoint game week 22. You want to look a little bit more beyond. So I think that's worth noting. And we're going to be looking at Son replacements going into game week 22. So as always, I just want to quickly see what is everybody saying. Com saying, I've gone from free hits to Salah to Son, so I've no idea what I'm doing yet. Obviously, Son right now is really ruining plans going in. Nuclear Atoms, hope you're doing well. Can Bruno or Sancho provide any good returns this week? Well, one of those assets in particular is coming up quite well in our projected points for game weeks 22, so I'm going to bring that one up in a bit. George saying who to get for Son. Again, I'm going to be touching on Son replacements in a little bit, where I can really get some underlying stats on those. Cheeks, I hope we're doing well. And Tom's obviously answering some of the questions in there. So again, guys, really appreciate any sort of likes on the video. Really do appreciate it. So, as I mentioned, guys, that is a roundup of the double game weeks for 22. Of course, you can pause the screen, check them out yourselves. There are, of course, single game weeks. And again, I really do urge you guys checking out yesterday's video in particular, because I looked at some of the single game week players in isolation. In particular, Antonio Bowen, Trent and Jota, because 4 assets that are pretty highly owned right now, and assets that have a single game week, but very good single game week. Liverpool at home to Brentford, and we have West Ham at home to Leeds. So 2 very good fixtures for those teams that have a single game week. And I know a lot of managers right now and ahhing between free hitting and just playing free transfers. And I think right now, if you're in a situation where you're free hitting, I think you're going to really struggle to leave out the likes of Jota and Trent, even though they have single game weeks. And we're going to look in a minute at the projected points. They're still coming up very well in regards to their projected points for game week 22. So it's going to be very interesting to see how managers go through these single and double game weeks. So what I brought up here, guys, I just want to quickly touch on this, because this is the nature of the beast in fantasy football. You can see that on the screen, the transfer stats going into game week 22. And on that left-hand side, Son currently transferred in by 383, pretty much 384,000 managers ahead of his what was going to be decent double game week at home to Arsenal and away to Leicester. So I really do feel sorry for those managers that did go for the Son move early. But again, it just reinforces the discussion about holding those transfers to as close to deadline as possible. This is one of the rare cases where Son's actually out with an injury rather than COVID. We've been hit so hard with COVID recently. It's strange to actually get an injury that's impacted the transfer moves of players and managers. So again, guys, it is just worth mentioning that that is a situation, again, why we should be holding our transfers. Jota, Saka, Bowen, De Bruyne make up the rest of the big transfers going into game week 22. But this is going to definitely change over the coming 48 hours because of that Son news. You're probably going to see the transfer out column here with Son going into the top 3 of transfers out. And I wouldn't be surprised if the likes of Jotas and Kevin De Bruyne are going to be very highly owned in regards to transfer stats going into game week 22. So guys, let me know in the chat. Are you somebody who has already brought in Son? Have you been burnt by this injury? How has it affected your transfer plans? I'm really interested to know in the chat how you guys are going about your Son moves. Have you brought him in? Are you looking to sell him? Very interested to hear. So, without further ado, let us get into the projected points for game week 22, because I know that's why you guys are here, of course. And this is the Fantasy Football Fix apologies. Got there the predicted points and stats. For those that haven't checked out, a brilliant premium tool available on the Fantasy Football Fix website. And we're going to be showing you it for free. So, you know, privileged, very privileged. And we'll be showing here the actual projected points for game week 22 double. So you can see there, this is for all players. Ronaldo is by far in the lead in terms of projected points at 11.8 points. Second best is Maddison at 9.5. And as you can see there, Son is at 9.1, but because the news only broke about an hour or so ago, it hasn't had a chance to unfortunately update yet. So please do kind of just like delete what you've seen there in terms of Son. That isn't accurate at all because of the injury that he has going into game week 22. But the Ronaldos, the Madisons, Kane could be interesting, whether his projected points increase or decrease on the impact of Son being missing for Spurs. So be sure to keep an eye on that, and I'm sure I'll update you guys over the coming week about the projected points going into double game week 22. But as I mentioned, Ronaldo right now, in terms of the premium assets, leading the way for projected points at 11.8. And you can see there as well, Fernandes on projected points 8.7, who's going to be probably throwing his hat into the ring as a potential premium differential alternative to Son. And I know right now, not the most popular asset, but could do well over the coming game weeks with this double. But as I mentioned, away at Villa, away at Brentford, it's going to be interesting. Let me know in the chat, guys, what you think about those fixtures. I think they're going to be very tricky for Man United assets. But of course, our algorithm, because they have got all that game time available, is predicted to do very well over those fixtures in comparison to single game week players. Now, the one I'm really interested right now, and I know a lot of managers probably are right now, currently sat on Son, looking elsewhere for opportunities and probably not seeing the value in the likes of Kevin De Bruyne and Fernandes. Maddison right now, priced at 6.9 million, so you're going to be saving yourself nearly 4 million in the bank at 9.5 projected points in game weeks 22. Obviously, has a double game week for Maddison. I'll just bring them up for you guys to see. As you can see there, with Burnley away and Tottenham at home. Now, of course, Leicester still have a game week in game week 21 away to Everton. So if you are looking to bring in Maddison, I really do urge you guys just to hold fire, because he could easily play in this away fixture against Everton, get another injury, and you've done your Son to Maddison move, and now he's injured for game week 22. So it's really worth mentioning that he's still got a game to play and anything can happen. But if he does even feature in that game, because he is currently flagged in FPL, comes through with it without any damages whatsoever, I do think that in game week 22, he could be a brilliant option to target over the coming game weeks. Now, as we mentioned, 9.5 projected points. That was even going to outscore Son even when he was fit and raring to go. So that's why I really think Maddison is probably leading the way right now in terms of easy Son replacements where you don't need to necessarily find additional cash to upgrade Son. And I think the big thing as well that we need to remember, Salah right now, going to AFCON, is basically a transfer that you're probably going to want to make in 2 or 3 game weeks time. So you using up cash in the bank to bring in the likes of Kevin De Bruyne or Fernandes for Son could potentially cash you out of bringing in Salah down the line. So I really do urge managers just being cautious and have a bit of a Mo Salah plan in the back of their mind about how they're going to bring him back in. And that's why I think Maddison just opens up so many doors for managers in regards to how to go back to Mo Salah, and you're not having to fiddle around with another premium like Fernandes or De Bruyne in your team and then try and compensate with Salah. So I do think that that is a nice move for managers. I appreciate that you might want to hold a premium spot in the midfield, but I think this is a good time to maybe go down to these cheaper options available. Now, I just want to quickly see in the chat what people are saying in the chat. Any chance Son will be back for the double game week? So right now, the news is that he won't be available for the double game week. Now, it's worth mentioning, of course, that the double game week 22 is a week away. So plenty can happen between now and then. That's really why I would urge managers not to rush into any transfers. We could see a classic case of Premier League injuries where we're told that he's going to be out for weeks and weeks, and then suddenly miraculously recover and be back for the second game of the double game week. So if you do own Son, I still think there's an argument to maybe just hold on to him for now. Get an idea over the next week how severe this injury is, because you're going to kick yourself if you sell him and then find out Conte was being over the top about the injury. I think it's a bit early right now just to be pulling the trigger on selling him. And we can see Sam saying Son early transfers, owners in the mud. Yeah, unfortunate for those Son transfers. Colin said, I can't bring myself to get any Man United players at the moment. Maddison and even Lookman are the 2 players I'm currently looking at. Well, yeah, as I mentioned, Maddison is currently being brought up in the discussion. And Lookman's a player that I don't really think necessarily a lot of managers are considering right now because of the potential rotation that could be on him. Now, right now, projected for game week 22, he has 5.1 projected points. And with the injuries to the like of Vardy, potentially Daka, although there's news that he could be available for the double game week 22, and of course Ian Nacho at AFCON, this could make Lookman's game time a little bit more clear in this Leicester team. So I do think that he is someone to keep an eye out for sure. But if you're looking at a Leicester midfielder in particular, it definitely is Maddison that is getting all the plaudits right now in game week 22. Now, I know a lot of managers right now are probably looking at game week 22, focusing on that in particular. And I do think that managers need to just put a slight longer term head on when we look at the fixtures coming forward, because right now, obviously, the projected points are completely skewed towards those players that have double game weeks. And of course, I'm not telling anybody not to bring in double game week players. That is obviously the optimum move to make because they have higher chance of scoring points because they are playing double the amount of minutes if they feature over that period. So that's why I really think that targeting these double game week players is a priority, but I wouldn't let it completely dictate your decision making going forward. Now, if I'm to bring up here the coming projected points over the next 5 game weeks, this is going to be a good opportunity for managers to see how players are projected to score and how a lot of these players aren't even players that have particular double game weeks. Now, again, Cristiano Ronaldo leads the way on 38.7, but you can see there that 11.8 of those points are coming in game week 22. Jota on 35.8. It's picking up consistent points along the way, as you can see. In particular, game week 26, as he's projected to score 8.4 points. And again, this comes back to the conversation about not selling some of these single game week players, because although in the short term you might reap the rewards, longer term you might look to go back to that player, and that could be a bad use of your free transfer. And again, Jota is a perfect example of somebody in game week 22 who has a single game week, projected to score 8.1 points. That is more than some of the players that have double game weeks. So really one of those players that you shouldn't be looking to sell alongside Trent Alexander-Arnold. I know a lot of you are probably already aware of that, but I just want to solidify that thought process. Now, Kevin De Bruyne and Sterling, probably 2 players that might be on the radar for those Son owners that have a bit of cash in the bank. And as I mentioned, maybe want to keep a premium slot in the midfield open for 2 game weeks to target Salah back in your teams. They could be a nice long-term hold. Not necessarily for game week 22. Projected points are under 5 for both of those. But after game week 3 onwards, the projected points for both premium options are looking really, really good. The big question is, if you bring in someone like Kevin De Bruyne or Sterling, and you want to bring Salah in as well, you're only really looking at these 2 players for the next 2 game weeks. And then we're predicting to have Salah back for game week 24, maybe game week 25. Does your team allow you to have both Kevin De Bruyne and Salah in? I think you would need to have a bit of pre-planning before you made those moves to have them both as premium assets. So if I was looking at it for just the next 2 game weeks, I don't necessarily think there is huge upside in owning these premium assets when we have much cheaper options in the likes of Maddison, who is only projected to score just under 1 point less than Sterling and a little bit considerably more than Kevin De Bruyne. But again, with that double game week for Maddison and some okay fixtures after that, I think he's right now probably the go-to asset as a Son replacement. So just seeing here in the chat, we've got plenty of comments dropping in. Again, I'm going to be opening up the floor for a Q&A after I finish the hot topics. Sam saying Tielemans is going to haul. Yeah, I think that's definitely somebody who is probably under the radar right now. Most likely on penalties for Leicester with the absence of Jamie Vardy. Good double game week, and we know his game time is absolutely secure. Someone I probably want to drop into the underlying stats in a minute and take a look at. Maybe a comparison between Maddison and Tielemans. Let me know in the chat if you think that would be an interesting debate. I can throw that up in a minute. Tom is saying, do you do Fantasy Africa Cup of Nations? Unfortunately, we haven't got any plans for that. So no, we don't have any plans for that, unfortunately. Com saying there was, if you used a free hit for this week, in my opinion. Jack saying he will be out for a month. Okay, so a month does sound like it is going to be that. But again, I wouldn't urge managers to make any quick moves, especially for the likes of Maddison, who still has a game week 21 fixture to play. Nukarativ saying, will Kane outperform Ronaldo? Well, based on our projected points, we still have Ronaldo the clear favourite for not just game weeks 22, but over the next 5 game weeks in comparison to Kane. Kane on his own, 25.2 projected points over the next 5 game weeks, 8.8 projected points in game week 22. Obviously with that double, but without Son, that could hinder him from an attacking perspective. So I think it's a good opportunity for us guys to jump into some specific Son replacements, because I know that is probably why you guys are here. So I have brought up the fix comparison matrix, and I've put in a few of the players that we spoke about. Differing price points. De Bruyne, as I mentioned, is going to require some money in the bank, and I think you're probably going to have to worry more about Salah coming back into your team with this strategy. Maddison, as I mentioned, probably the natural replacement for Son in terms of projected points and price point. Jota, now I know probably in a lot of teams right now, but if you aren't with him, I think that is probably the best move that you can make in your teams. At 8.2 million, with the projected points of 8 points in game weeks 22, and over the next 5 game weeks, 35.8 points, that is just an easy transfer to make if you still don't have Jota and you don't have Salah. I think that's an easy move. I've put in Lucas Moura into the equation because I know a lot of managers right now are questioning whether that makes his game time even more secure. Maybe that sees Lucas Moura play alongside Harry Kane, or just secures his spot in the front three. And with 16 projected points, I would argue that these may go up with the absence of Son once we recalculate it and input the Son injury. It's worth sticking around for that over the coming days, where we can update you with that news if that does happen. But Lucas Moura is someone who's been ticking over quite nicely as an FPL asset. And I've left the 5th box open for you guys. So I want you to drop in the comments over the next 30 seconds. Who would you like the 5th player to be? Let me know, and I will take the most popular question, most popular answer in a minute. So let me know, guys, in the comments. Let's have a quick drink and yeah, drop it in there now. Let me know, guys, who you want to know. I see Trossard early on from Ryan. That could definitely be someone who could come into the equation. Somebody that I don't think necessarily a lot of managers are looking at right now. But as I said, guys, quickly drop in. We see Sterling as an option. Trossard, Ryan. Okay, I'm going to drop in Trossard for you because I've seen you've popped it in a couple of times. Let's get Trossard in. And you've done it in capitals. So I'm going to abide by that because I'm worried what you might do to me if I don't. So here we have Brighton, Trossard. And just to remind you, in regards to the fixture analyzer for Brighton, they have home fixtures against Crystal Palace and Chelsea. And in regards to Trossard for game week 22 projected points, he is projected to score 6.6 points in game weeks 22. Now, it's worth mentioning, game week 24 is a blank game week for Brighton and Trossard. So if you're looking at a longer term transfer, just be cautious that he isn't going to be available for game week 24, whether that is going to be, you know, a make or break for you in your team. But 17.6 projected points over the next 5 game weeks for Trossard, interestingly, makes him higher than Lucas Moura, even with that blank game week. So he could be an interesting pick at 6.1 million. I wouldn't necessarily be massively excited by the fixture, the second fixture they have against Chelsea, but the Crystal Palace fixture could prove to be a nice one for them. So looking at the FPL points, no surprises that Jota leads the way, followed by Maddison, Trossard, Kevin De Bruyne, and then Lucas Moura. But again, the minutes played by these assets are very differing. Trossard leading the way on 1,500. Goals, again, Jota, no surprises there with the position that he's playing as a centre forward in this Liverpool team. Maddison with the 5 goals and probably the form pick right now in fantasy. Obviously having a great previous, I would say 7 or 8 game weeks where he's really stepped up. We've seen comments about him actually find his confidence again. And I think that's somebody who has been on the bandwagon for quite a while now, and it's only naturally going to improve and get bigger over the coming game weeks. And Trossard actually with 4 goals is quite surprising to see because he's always felt like an underwhelming asset. 5 FPL assists as well for Maddison leading the way. Lucas Moura with 3, kind of showing that he's a well-rounded asset as we were to know. And 28 shots for Lucas Moura, but Jota again leading the way on 52. 36 for both Maddison and Kevin De Bruyne. And the FPL bonus points, again, Maddison leading the way with 10, Kevin De Bruyne on 9, Trossard on 8. So very interesting to see Trossard picking up 8 bonus points there. That could actually be quite a big factor when managers are deciding between Lucas Moura and Trossard. So based on the underlying stats and looking at the projected points going forward, I think Trossard versus Lucas Moura, I think Trossard could win the battle there a little bit. Again, you need to be cautious about the blank game week in 24. But looking at these projected points, looking at his price point as well, being cheaper than Lucas Moura, I think Trossard could offer a nice alternative if you're currently debating Lucas Moura or Trossard. Now, when we look at the best option available, as I mentioned, Jota is the best option if you don't own him. But I really think Maddison is a better pick than Kevin De Bruyne. At nearly 6 million cheaper, I just don't think we can justify going for someone like Kevin De Bruyne, who doesn't have a double game week in 22. And fixtures are okay for Man City. Again, fixtures are a little bit irrelevant for Man City assets because of how dominant they are in games. But I think Maddison offers the differential, the price point, the underlying stats, the game time. I just think he kind of ticks all the boxes right now. And if he does get through game week 21 unscathed, I think it's quite an easy move for managers to make, where you're not having to worry too much about him going into game week 22, because right now it is an absolute minefield for injuries and COVID situations. And I feel that one might just give you a bit of calmness about it for the transfer. So I do like Maddison as the alternative option. Now, I see a lot of people right now dropping in, as I mentioned earlier, about who to put into the comparison matrix. I see a lot of people about Lookman. As I mentioned, Maddison is still the go-to guy. I think if you go for Lookman, he is a nice move, but you're probably just wishing you're going to have Maddison in your team just because of his set pieces, influence on the team. I just think he's probably the better move in regards to Maddison. I see Chris Wood being dropped in the conversation. Now, Chris Wood is a very interesting option to consider. Now, looking at our projected points for game week 22, we can see that Chris Wood, in regards to forwards, is actually right now the 4th best for projected points over the next 5 game weeks. But in isolation, in game week 22 alone, he's actually the 3rd best on 8.6 points. Now, when we look at his upcoming fixtures, he has Leicester at home and Watford at home. And as I mentioned, the best fixtures based on our fixture analyzer, and the Watford game in particular looking like a really good fixture for him. Now, after game week 22, and this is why I think managers need to look a little bit more long-term when they're making their transfers if you're not free hitting. That's followed by Arsenal away, Man United at home, and Liverpool at home, followed by Brighton away, which isn't an easy game by any stretch. So, if you're currently in a free hit right now, I really do think that Chris Wood offers a brilliant cheap option into that front line when the likes of Harry Kane and Ronaldo might not necessarily be attractive to own both of those. I think Chris Wood just offers a really nice enabler into that front line with this double game week. If you're looking to transfer him in for a longer term strategy, I really think you're putting a lot of pressure on this double game week 22 to reap the rewards, because after this double game week, I don't see many big returns for Chris Wood. So let me know in the chat, guys. Is Chris Wood someone you're considering right now? I think if he's on the if he's on a free hit, definitely someone that should be in the equation right now. Now, I've seen a lot of people mention about Bowen. As I mentioned, in terms of a deep dive into single game week players, once we finish this stream, I really recommend you guys checking out yesterday's video. I've done a deep dive into Antonio, Bowen, Jota, and Trent Alexander-Arnold as single game week players, and why you should consider owning them going into this week, even if you're free hitting based on their underlying stats and projected points. So I would really recommend checking out that video, as I probably won't be able to do it justice in comparison in this live stream, but I'm more than happy to jump onto some of this underlying stats for those assets. FPL Penguin, hope you're doing well. Mount, a lot of talk about Mount right now. So yeah, I think we'll get Mount into the conversation in regards to, first and foremost, projected points for midfielders in game week 22. Now, as we know, Chelsea have a double game week. Mason Mount projected to score 7.2 points, which is not bad at all. Again, 2 points less than Maddison and even the likes of Jota, who has only a single game week. And with Mason Mount, with the fixtures that they do have coming up with Man City away and Brighton away, they are pretty tricky fixtures for Chelsea. And I don't necessarily see their attacking assets getting huge hauls over that period. And when we do look at longer term strategies, Tottenham at home is going to be, I wouldn't necessarily say a tricky game, because we saw the Carabao Cup performance of Chelsea against Spurs. Of course, the league game can be very, very different. But that I don't see necessarily a huge haul either for Mason Mount, projected to score 4.8 points. But then you have to remember Chelsea blank in game weeks 24 and 25. So if you are looking to bring in Mason Mount as part of a transfer strategy, you need to look a little bit longer term, because he will be a transfer out after game week 23. In terms of a free hit, I think he's definitely a consideration at his price point at 7.7 million. But I really do think the likes of Maddison, Jota, even the likes of a differential in Barnes or Tielemans is probably right now ahead of Mount in terms of a free hit team. And we even spoke about the likes of Trossard, who could be nice alternatives. But I do think Mason Mount's game time of any Chelsea attacker is probably the most secure going into the double game week 22. Okay, some people saying about bringing in Bruno Fernandes into the equation. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to quickly mix up the fixed comparison matrix that we do have with some different assets that are available to us. So I'm going to put in Raheem Sterling into the equation. We're going to be putting in Fernandes, of course. Apologies, guys. I'm just trying to get up Bruno. Jota, we're going to put Tielemans in alongside Maddison just to get an idea on how they both fall against one another. And let's keep Kevin De Bruyne in right now for a comparison between Sterling and Kevin De Bruyne. So first and foremost, the Leicester duo. Maddison is, as I mentioned, projected to score more points over the next 5 game weeks at 26.7. Now, if the injury to Jamie Vardy continues to be over a longer term, that will mean that Tielemans' penalties duties, and I do think he is on penalties, is going to continue in each game week, which naturally offers another string to his bow that Maddison doesn't have. And it's 6.4 million and 6.9 million respectively. I don't necessarily think there is enough of a price gap to think I'm going to save a bit of cash and go for Tielemans as an alternative to Maddison. Although Tielemans has been getting into attacking positions, you can see there with 5 goals apiece, 5 FPL assists for Maddison, 2 for Tielemans, but 29 shots for Tielemans, 36 for Maddison. You can see there that they're still close, but the big factor is the minutes are very, very similar. The bonus points are super similar, but the projected points are just swaying towards Maddison. And that's why I probably would just pay a little bit more to go for Maddison over Tielemans. But I do appreciate that Tielemans offers a bit of a different alternative to Maddison, where the market, I imagine, is going to go that direction. With Tielemans and penalties, I think that could be a nice shrewd move for managers because his game time is absolutely locked on. Now, in terms of the premium shootout between Kevin De Bruyne, Fernandes and Sterling, Fernandes right now over the next 5 game weeks is projected to score less points than Kevin De Bruyne and Sterling. And of course, he does have that double game week in 22. So in regards to 22 in isolation, I think Fernandes is the better pick of the 3. In particular for free hitting, I don't think you can consider De Bruyne or Sterling. Fernandes would win the battle there. But over the longer term, I do see the value in owning a premium Man City midfielder. I think the big thing is just how rotation is going to pan out in this Man City team. We've seen Foden out with COVID. We've seen rotation amongst other players. Once Foden comes back in, once Grealish gets game time, is that going to hinder some of the game time for these other assets? Again, it's that pet rotation that we just cannot judge. And that's the really difficult part about it when you're paying an absolute premium for potential rotational players. And that's probably what just puts me off right now going for a Man City asset. Although the 29.2 projected points is great for Kevin De Bruyne, I just see Maddison at 6 million less and think to myself, I could probably just get a slice of that pie and leave the Man City midfielders. And if you have the likes of Bernardo Silva or Phil Foden, probably just stick with those. Stick with those. So I think 2 Man City midfielders starts to really give you some problems in your FPL team over the longer term. So I think that's probably the way I would go right now in regards to Man City midfielders. Okay, apologies guys. The chat's kind of skipped loads, so I kind of need to check out what I have missed here. And I apologise if I've missed any questions going into it. So we got one from Chinazo who said, what do you think about Rafinha? Was gutted he wasn't involved in Leeds' 3 goals last game. Yeah, I think Rafinha is still a really good asset in regards to over the coming game weeks. Now, looking at the projected points, of course, because Leeds don't have a double game week, it is going to not look appealing for Rafinha owners. But if we look at it between game weeks 22 and 26 over the next 5 game weeks, Rafinha projected to score 20.4 points. So, again, the premium assets naturally looking to score more points than him. And even the likes of Lanzinis and Bowens looking like better alternatives to Rafinha. But I think if you right now own him, or you're looking at a bit of a, not differential, but kind of going back to a proven asset, I think Rafinha is a perfectly good player to bring back in. And I think Leeds are naturally probably going to improve over the coming game weeks when the likes of Bamford returns. And just generally the team kind of gets back to where Bielsa wants them, because it's obviously been such a poor start to the season for them. Apologies, guys. We're just catching up. So Mohamed saying, is Maddison injured? So currently right now, his status is flagged in FPL. Now, we do draw in the injury news here, and you can see the availability December 28th. A quote was, we'll see how they are both a bit sore. I think James is fine. Potential return 8th of January 2022. So we are predicting him to be back for that game week 21 fixture. And again, for all those managers that are targeted him in game week 22, that's a brilliant opportunity because we know he's playing. We know Leicester have a game next week. That's just going to secure whether he is available or not. So that just kind of gives you the answer you need going into Friday, fingers crossed. Carl saying about how about Bruno? I've touched on him in that predicted points. Hopefully that's provided a little bit of insight on Bruno. I think he is a good alternative for one game week. But then after that, I don't really think necessarily he is somebody who's going to be on the radar just because of that price point right now. Nuclear Acid, I'm sold on Trossard now. This stream already cleared out my headache. That's good to know with Trossard. Somebody who, again, when I came into the stream, didn't even consider him. Could be a nice option. But a question here, a point here saying Trossard is going to be moving out wide because Welbeck is back. Trossard will no longer play striker. Very valid point as well. With the more pace, the Welbecks in the team, that probably will naturally see Trossard drift a bit wider. Now, whether that's going to impact his game time, his returns or not, I'm not too sure. But I think Trossard's still a shrewd pick if you want to go down that route. FPL Philip saying, what are your thoughts on a front three with Kane, Ronaldo and Lukaku on a free hit? Wow, Eddie knows how to go big on his free hits. That is huge. Kane, Ronaldo and Lukaku. Well, of course, when we're looking at game week 22 in isolation, if we get the projected points up again, Ronaldo, I think if anybody's free hitting, it's just an easy move to make in their teams. Now, with Harry Kane, of course, how is Son being absent in game week 22 going to hinder his attack and returns? I would probably say it's not going to improve it, really. Now, we know he's on penalties, and I think probably based on the recent game weeks, he has looked like an improved player under Conte. But at 12.2 million and with Wood at 6.7 million, and the projected points being so close, I would argue that a Ronaldo, Kane or Lukaku and Wood is probably the direction I would go. I think a Ronaldo, Kane and Lukaku, doing a bit of quick maths here, that's probably going to be about 30 odd million in your team. I probably don't think I could justify going down that route. So I think Ronaldo's an absolute lock. I think Kane probably just pips Lukaku in terms of a premium striker. And I really do like Chris Wood as the alternative forward in that front line. But again, if you want to go big with those forwards, I cannot argue it at all going into this double game week. We got people saying about Wood. Yeah, I think Wood's going to be very popular. Watkins versus Antonio. I really do think that he is going to be... Watkins is going to be a very interesting asset over the coming game weeks. Of course, Coutinho has been signed for Aston Villa. How that is going to shape their team going forward, anybody's guess is better than mine. But I do think that is going to it's going to only improve Watkins as an asset if he does continue to get game time in this team. New guys about Lukaku, Watkins versus Antonio. Well, based on the projected points that I have up here, in terms of game weeks 22 alone, we have currently Antonio to score 5.5 points, and we have Watkins down at 3.7 points. But of course, arguably the tougher game at 3.7 projected points against Man United at home. Now, we have a recent quote here about Ollie is due back with the group on Saturday, so that would be a welcome addition, and that was 2 days ago. So, of course, the deadline being next Friday, I'd imagine he will be available for game week 22 at home to Man United. And don't be surprised if Aston Villa pick up a result against Man United. Apologies, apologies, Man United fans. And when we look at the longer term fixtures over the projected points, you can see there that Antonio projected to score 25.9, Watkins 19.9. So Antonio's still the man to own in that front line. Just checking through the last few questions, guys. As I said, please do like the video if you are enjoying it. Obviously, I'm trying to cover as much as I can because unfortunately this stream I will have to end it in about 5 minutes or so. So any questions that you do have, please drop them in the chat and I'll try to answer as many as possible. Fulmin saying about checking out the AFCON Fantasy, I definitely would be worth looking at that. I definitely will check it out after this stream for sure. Worth a free hit when you only have 2 double game week players. I think right now, looking at the fixtures that we have with us for game week 22, I think probably a lot of managers right now are probably thinking it's quite an underwhelming double game week. Now, the big thing about playing your free hit in this double game week is you're probably going to bring in a lot of players that managers don't have. And in some way, that does make the free hit attractive. As I mentioned, you're probably looking at a Burnley defender and Chris Wood, probably two that a lot of managers don't own. Watford, well, you're going to be going for Dennis or King, and you wouldn't touch defender. But then Brighton, as I mentioned, quite a few differentials in like a Cucurella and Trossard. Now, again, in yesterday's video, I covered some Brighton defenders, and Cucurella is currently projected to score the third most points in game week 22 for all defenders, only behind Alonso and Azpilicueta. So if you are in the market for a Brighton defender and a cheap defender in general, I think Cucurella is a really nice move. Just be cautious of that blank game week in 24. But again, if you free hit a Cucurella Trossard double up, you could even go for a rogue punt in the likes of Fernandes as your premium midfielder, because we know his ownership is so small in comparison to last season. And again, with Spurs, I wouldn't necessarily be piling into them now with the absence of Son, but maybe a pick of Kane would be a bit against the grain with the recent market, with managers more piling in onto the Sons and the James Maddisons. So I think free hit is a nice move with two double game weekers, but I would probably look at future doubles and blanks as the best time to play them. I just don't really think your free hit is going to be worthwhile, and I think with two double game weekers, with a couple of free transfers and points hits, you could get a really strong team. Because as I mentioned, the single game weeks are still very strong for the Liverpool triple up, for the West Ham triple up. So I think there's still great value in these single game weeks alone. Nuclear Atom saying, can McAllister be a good pick? I think he could be a shrewd pick, but I probably would be cautious of his game time. As we mentioned with Trossard, Morpay, Welbeck, plenty of players that can sneak game time away from him. I think that's probably a transfer waiting to happen. Not something that I would consider. George 100 saying DCL mid-price strikers other than Antonio. Yes, I think DCL is a nice move. Again, Everton do have their second fixture of game week 21 still to happen. So we're going to get plenty of information in that game on the status of Calvert-Lewin. So right now, again, Calvert-Lewin, somebody on the watch list for sure, but we need to see how he gets through that second game. So again, not somebody I would necessarily be rushing to bring in anytime soon. Jack saying, who would you be looking at getting, Nacho, if you had Salah and Son and are looking to take them out and have Bowen, Gray and Jota already? So as I mentioned, I think the strategy is all about how to get Salah back into your team in around game week 25, I believe, or game week 24. So I would probably look at a Maddison as a pick. As we mentioned, you haven't got any Leicester ownership right now. Projected points are the second best of anybody in double game week 22. I think that's an easy move for you. I think the other question is, do you want to hold a place in your team for Salah? So you could either hold the money in the team and have a Man City midfielder like Kevin De Bruyne or Sterling, or you go big and go someone like Fernandes, and then you make a little bit of cash in the bank to go sideways to Salah. Or you go for the pick that I think a lot of managers are going to go for, keep plenty of cash in the bank, be very flexible, and go for these mid-price midfielders. So I think Maddison is a really nice move, as we mentioned. You could double up with Tielemans, but I don't really like the Leicester double up in terms of that. So in terms of projected points, as I mentioned for midfielders, I think looking at it, again, you've owned a lot of the players I would like. I think Maddison's definitely someone I would own. I think there's a debate to keep Salah if you want to, but I appreciate you probably don't want to hold him over the 2 game weeks. But Maddison should be top of your list for sure, for sure. Dennis or Ronaldo? It's got to be Ronaldo. It depends on the funds available. Thoughts on Lookman? I think he's a nice move, but I think you just probably want to go for someone like Tielemans or Maddison. I think you're paying a little bit cheaper for someone like Lookman, but the other assets available are still really nice prices at 6.9 and 6.4. Just pay a little bit more and get those boys in. Okay, I see there's a lot of deleted comments in there. I imagine there's a bit of trolling going on maybe. I'm not too sure what is on there. A lot of talk about Bruno Fernandes. As I mentioned, for game week 22 in isolation, really do like him as a pick. In terms of long term, probably not someone that I would want in my team. Just Man United right now, not looking the best. I think the double game week looks okay for them. But again, with the formation that they're in, is Fernandes' game time even guaranteed? I'm not too sure, and I don't think I'd want to take that risk. Danny's saying about best Son replacements. If you just jumped in, Danny, I would really recommend, because the stream is going to be ended in a minute, just checking out the video. Halfway through, we covered some Son replacements, but just to wrap it up, I think James Maddison is probably up there with the best alternative. Underlying stats, price point, and projected points are beating some of those premium assets available. It's going to give you cash in the bank to be flexible over the coming game weeks. But again, we need to see Leicester in that second game of game week 21. So we'll hold any potential transfers going into this week. People say about trusting the Newcastle defence. I would not touch them at all. Yeah, guys, apologies for all the spam in the chat. I see Tom is on it. Again, there was quite a lot in there, so it probably took Tom a while to get rid of them all. So I appreciate you guys sticking around even with that, the troll involved. So I do appreciate you guys just ignoring that. Yeah, guys, again, I think we've pretty much covered a lot of this, really. Would you keep, and that's the same, would you keep Foden? Again, with the deadline being a week away, I really do think that just waiting for now is the best move that you can make. We know that he was out with COVID in game week 21. I would not be surprised if he is available for game week 22. Again, even though he could be confirmed available, we just know that that is going to mean no clarity on whether he starts or not. But I think that's enough of a reason probably to hold on to him for game week 22. I don't think you need to sell him if that is the question that you're asking. So yeah, guys, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. It's been a 45-minute stream. But again, with the deadline being over a week away, there is going to be plenty of time for us to be having further conversations about game week 22 double. So I really do recommend, first and foremost, you guys checking out yesterday's video. That was a deep dive into double game week 22 players and looking at other alternatives. So I really do recommend you guys checking that out video. And again, make sure you like the video and hit that subscribe button, because we have plenty of videos dropping between now and the Friday deadline. I really don't want you guys to be missing out on any of these videos coming up, because we're just going to be talking more and more once we get more information about injuries and COVID situations that you don't want to be missing out. So I really do appreciate you guys jumping in on the live stream. Apologies if I didn't answer any of your questions, but again, make sure you subscribe so you can tune into the next live stream or video that we have coming out. There's definitely going to be one more live stream before double game week 22. So thank you very much for tuning in, guys. Have a great week. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.